when I started this, I assumed that if only people knew what was going on, it would have stopped it. I mean, there's no way that, you know, the agencies, the governments, that the whole, you know, system would allow essentially 100,000 people, that's how many were down in the Monterey and Santa Cruz spray zone, to be sprayed against their will. And I was encouraged by our assembly member down there, John Laird, who was actually taking active steps to contact the Department of Food and Agriculture to express the concerns of the people. And the petition was started in order to support him in that endeavor. You know, it's 5 months later, and we have made some progress, and we do have legislative proposals in play, or in the works, being looked at, being evaluated, being drafted into law, or whatever the, you know, whatever the process is that they go through. But the reality is there's still a spray map up on the wall. These documents were delivered to a number of lawmakers, state agencies, government officials when on January 8th, was it, when you guys drove up there? They drove up to Sacramento with these documents in a car and hand-delivered them to these offices to make sure that they didn't get lost in the mail. And there's still a map on the wall they're planning to spray us, right? So, you know, we could just think that these 643 people just don't matter, right? Or that there's something more that needs to happen. I personally believe they know the risks. They know that the people don't want this. I mean, I've got 3,500 signatures, most of with a comment that says, please don't spray us, for a lot of very logical reasons. I mean, you can go to the petition online at stopthespray.org and you can read each and every one of these comments. They're there for the entire world to see, and we've hand-delivered these to the lawmakers so that they can see what people are saying about this. They know what they're saying. And, you know, the sad thing about it is our health seems to be an acceptable casualty for them to exercise this program. And for what purpose? Well, this is even more frustrating. There's been, I mean, prepare yourself for this, there's been no crop damage by this moth in the state of California to date. And this has been repeatedly asked, what is the damage? And, you know, the Department of Food and Agriculture has said back to that there is no damage. But it could really be terrible because, you know, what happened over there in New Zealand and in Australia. Well, from the latest data that I've been able to gather, the only data of destruction was in 1993 when $75,000 worth of Chardonnay grapes were ruined. In 1993! So out of all of this, I've been looking at this issue for 5 months. The most I've been able to dig out was $75,000 worth of wine grapes in Australia over a decade ago. So what's going on? And when we were meeting with Senator Maldonado's district manager, who happens to be the head of the Agriculture Committee in the Senate, he was saying, well, you got to see it, you know, we've got to protect the industry. And even, you know, I've heard from other lawmakers, you got to understand, you know, money is everything. We've got to, you know, protect our California industry. It's like, no, what about the health? It's not just about the money. And in Maldonado's office, he was drilling on us about the damage to the crops. So he said, what is the damage? We can't find any damage. And he said, well, I know a farmer who's damaged. And it's like, well, what happened? Well, he tried to ship some of his crops to Florida, and Florida wouldn't let him because he was in a quarantine zone. Well, the crops were fine, right? Yeah, but they were refused. It's a trade issue. It's all about trade. It's a show to our trading partners, both inside the United States, Canada, I believe, and Mexico, and other trading partners, that we're doing everything we can to eradicate this moth. It's not even about protecting our crops.
But it's sure about money.
Well, it's all about money, but it's not even like, the crops aren't even being damaged, right. It's not even about law. So what I wanted to do is just talk to you about a few little things. You're going to hear a lot of information. It's very careful that when you look at it, and those that you meet with and talk about it, that you explain to them that misinformation is happening. Caroline just did a great discussion about what's going on inside of the chemicals. It took us 4 months to get the chemicals because they were saying it was trade secret data of the companies. They're spraying it over our heads, we're breathing it into our lungs, but it's protected by trade secret law, and we can't see what's in it. The pheromone breaks down in water, and all of the ingredients are biodegradable, so runoff is not a concern. Oh, well, funny they should actually post the dead seabird article on the same website. Obviously they thought it was enough of a concern to post it, which basically says 500 birds, and Isabel had clarified earlier that it was more like thousands, have died off. But that's not a problem because they died off of the red tide, and runoff is not a concern. They sprayed everything in Santa Cruz and it rained a few days later. All of that washed down into the river, right? And right out into the bay. Well, mysteriously, there was this mysterious red tide. This chemical has these things called surfactants, and then these things can actually feed things like the red tide. I also know from the council members of Santa Cruz that their municipal guys were pumping out some strange foam from under the boardwalk a few days after the rains happened. And then thousands of dead birds. I don't know, what do you think, coincidence?
My name is Shannon Biggs. I work with an international human rights organization called Global Exchange, just down the street here. There's something new that is happening in communities all across the country. Just yesterday, a community in Halifax, Virginia became the 105th community to pass a binding ordinance in their town. They're working on, their issue is uranium mining. And the fact is that in their community, the company had the right, the permit, and this is all about permitted use. The spray is permitted by the state. So they have the right to come in and spray against our well. So this is, just to talk about reframing this as about our rights, about the corporation rights, the corporation that makes checkmate, and the state's rights to make decisions for us and for our communities. So in Halifax, Virginia passed a binding ordinance that bans uranium mining in their community. What's different about this ordinance is it's not about technical data, it's not about health, it's not about, the language isn't about any of that. It's about, through the ordinance, corporations and governing officials will be held liable for chemical trespass. This is about our fundamental right to decide who decides in our community whether we get this spray or not. And this organizing model that I'm talking so briefly about is actually part of a very intensive look actually at the law and how our laws are set up to enable this sort of thing to happen in our communities, and how we've really lost a lot of control in our communities. And this organizing work is about turning that around and reclaiming our rights. That organizing is done through democracy schools, which some of you may have heard of, but the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund has started a school to really explore the rights of communities and to look at where corporations drive the rights and how rights are sort of passed down into communities, where we can go from here.